Last week, the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections.
Well, that was President Obama at his 2010 State of the Union address, blasting the United States Supreme Court for its ruling and warning about the fallout from that ruling that opened the door to more political spending by corporations and, less highlighted by the president, by unions. Today, the other side of the story. The Wall Street Journal this week released an exhaustive report finding that labor spends about 4 times as much on politics and lobbying than believed before. They looked at the years from 2005 through 2011. They started with the number usually cited by unions based on filings that they have to make with the Federal Election Commission, which is $1.1 billion in political spending. That was the number believed to have been exhausted by them. But the Journal uncovered an additional $3.3 billion based on additional documents that unions had to file, bringing the total amount of union political spending to $4.4 billion. That is practically $1 billion a year in between election cycles, presidential election cycles. Joining me now for a fair and balanced debate on where that leaves us, Dan Gerstein, president of Gotham Ghostwriters, and Ben Ferguson, host of the Ben Ferguson Show on the Icon Radio Network. I mean, that's a lot of change, $4.4 billion. And the question is, Ben, whether this says something about union power versus, PAC power, corporation power, that the left has had, a real issue with in the past.
This is a 1-2 punch. I mean, this is union power with the power of being a PAC at the same time. It's a union PAC. And if you look at the roles, unions have gotten smaller over the last 10 years, the last 15 years. So they've had to raise even more money and try to be more influential through political donations to keep their clout. We saw what happened with Governor Walker. The amount of money that unions were able to spend is much more than I've seen PACs be able to have that much influence. And they were able to do it because they say, look, if you want to keep your job and all these higher level of benefits and higher level of pay than the private sector, you got to pony up some cash so that we can fight this, and that's what the unions are doing right now.
They say, Dan, that look, this is that the Journal's including too much that they do in the politics category.
Well, let's step back. To focus on this comparison, unions versus super PACs, misses the dying forest for the desiccated trees. The whole system, our whole campaign finance system, is rotten and rigged. It was rotten and rigged before Citizens United, and that's made it exponentially worse.
That's the Supreme Court decision that the president was criticizing.
This is not a partisan problem. It's not an ideological problem. Both sides game the system. Both sides exploit loopholes and bend the rules to gain advantage. Now, if you're asking me what's the bigger threat to the public interest in the democratic process, there's no comparison. This is apples to chocolate-covered strawberries. The super PACs do not have to disclose where the most of their money comes from. They have no constitutional standing. They were created pretty much out of whole cloth by the Supreme Court.
But who spends more?
Well, first of all,
unions.
No, that's not true at all. Corporations outspend unions 10-1. But again, it's missing the point.
That's what we thought before this report. Do we still think that, Ben?
Well,
and then I'll go back to that.
We're talking about billions of dollars here. Obviously, the influence that unions have been able to have over the last several elections is really impressive. The fact that you can be such a small organization and be losing members and have as much influence as unions have at the White House from the president and governor's races, ask Governor Walker, shows how powerful and how much money the unions can buy their influence, and they're doing that in these elections. But to act like unions are somehow not big or they're not super PACs, I think is disingenuous, because that's exactly what they are.
That's not
money buys power, and they're buying it.
Let me just shift the debate for a minute, Dan, because
I'd just like to finish my point.
Sure, go ahead.
The big difference is super PACs, again, they don't have to disclose.
You made that point.
And a big difference is they are not spending money to organize. They're not spending money to represent and communicate to their members. That's what the bulk of the money that unions spend. And again, unions spend a lot of money on donations.
That is not what the Journal report says. The Journal talks about how they are spending a lot of money persuading their members on how to vote, the way the unions want them to.
Super PACs
and if you're in a union, then you're used to this. I mean, a lot of teacher friends of mine have told me that the union comes to them, pressures them every election. Who are you going to vote for governor? Who are you going to vote for president? This is who we think you should vote for. Why are you considering voting for the other guy? And so this happens. So, and this is because the union gets organized and they go to their members and say, let me tell you how bad the other guy is. The point of the Journal article, Ben, is that that 92% of the time, what they're saying to their members is, you better be voting for the Democrat. Whereas these corporations and these donates, they say that the donations is 50-50 Democrats, Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, if I work at a private company, there's a good chance that I can put my money to the candidate that I want. If I'm in a union, 92% of that cash is going to Democratic candidates, even if I oppose it. That's the problem with this whole entire power that unions have is you really, if you're a member, you pay your dues. You don't have a say-so in which candidate your money goes to support. The leadership decides we're Democratic, we're going after Barack Obama, that's our guy, or we're going after the person that's running against, Governor Walker, for example, and you have no say-so. So when people say they want to know where the money's coming from, how many people in unions are able to hide behind the union, and we never know as an individual who that person is or what they really think? That's the big, big shadow of darkness I want to know is who's in the union and how much money are they given through the union.
Shadow of darkness. Ben, this is part of the problem with the debate, is he's creating a boogeyman to shower attention on the unions. We have a
Can you tell me in the unions
problem.
where the money's coming from?
They're coming from union members. But Ben, here's the big difference.
Who are the members?
All
You
union
can't tell me who the members are.
Ben, all union contributions have to be disclosed. How they're spending has to be disclosed. That's where the Wall Street Journal got their information. All their political activity has been charted and disclosed to the Department of Labor. With super PACs, there's almost no disclosure, and there's no accountability.
The Journal says that there's no requirement that unions report all of this other spending to the Federal Election Commission.
That's Federal Election Commission. They report it to the
right, but there's
Department of Labor.
another $3 billion that they say that they don't have to report.
But that's because it's not partisan campaign activity. A lot of it is advocacy spending, and that's a big difference.
Advocacy
again.
and mandating.
Super PACs are purely there to elect candidates.
Hold on.
Quickly, Ben, I gotta
go. If advocacy is saying to your members, you must vote for this person, that is political in nature, and we should be known about that information.
But
we're talking about $3 billion of advocacy.
But $3 billion not
I want to be in the advocacy
activity.
business.
It's a lot of money.
Advocacy is for advocacy for legislation.
It's a lot of dough. It's not as much as
doing.
you might get from a bar of gold. I'm kidding you, Ben. You may recognize Ben not just from the show, but from some side work he does. But it's a lot of dough. Guys, thank you both so much.
Thank you, Megyn.
It's good to be here.
Well, we should